Hello fellow leggers, we are driving once again in our car to the theatre.
Which must mean that it's time for another. Has anybody got a map?
Has anybody got a map?
Anybody have a map?
I've got to say, it's getting quite nice and sunny, fellow leggers.
It's a beautiful day here, to be honest with you.
So there's some weird lighting going on with our faces, our apologies.
But we've got some hot topics to talk about. We are spilling the tea, see, down with the kids, spilling the tea for you today on all things theatre. And I think there's no better place to start than some of your thoughts, because we invite all of your comments on these, and we've had some cracking comments.
Is this to do with bad theatre?
Yeah, firstly we're going to kick off with bad theatre etiquette from our first video.
Ooh.
Now, the Willie Trout Esquire.
Yes.
This is a bloody doozy.
I love Willie Trout Esquire.
It really is. We've got I'm for direct. This is how do you address bad theatre etiquette, leggers? What is it? You know, should you be passive aggressive like me?
No.
Have you got to dive
This is
straight
where I
in?
like it. If you've got a problem, say it. If people don't know, how are you going to expect them to be any different?
I've got one to talk about a little bit later from a recent visit to the Young Vic, where I tried to address it with mixed results, but we'll come on to that a bit later. Anyway, Willie, she or he, we're not quite sure, are we?
No, don't know.
Let us know, Willie.
Trout. Not that it even matters.
Yeah, but Willie says, I'm for direct. Turn your phone off. You are annoying me, and if you are filming, your actions are illegal.
Ouch.
There's a whole other chat we need to have about bootlegs at some time. I think we'll put that on the to-do list and about how people feel about those.
Okay.
Never had a problem, Willie goes on to say, but where I live, ushers manage to shut phone down quickly.
That's how it should be.
It is. They should be front of house staff need better training, really.
We often say this. We always say front of house is almost like NHS. Like staffing has been cut, the funding has been cut. So as a result, there are less ushers on the ground, which means there's poor practice. But ultimately, it should come down to ushers, right?
Well, I think so. I mean, it's part of the job, no? Maybe you are an usher. How do you deal with it? That would be a chat. Get an usher involved. What are you told to do when it comes to that? I'd love to know from an insider's point of view.
Because that's going to take some balls as well, right?
We have to be a certain disposition to be able to actually just go and address it, right? Willie continues, once watched Lin-Manuel Miranda blanch a phone addict with a blink and you've missed it. Thoroughly hateful, shockingly vicious glare. If anyone's going to shut you down, it'll be Lin, right? Offender immediately stuffed phone under his ass. Wasn't me, they say.
No, wait. That's a very... do you know, he doth protest too much.
The lady doth protest too much.
Yeah,
So.
it wasn't me. You're very quick with that, Willie.
Yeah,
Are we sure?
A little bit defensive there. Always amused when I read Miranda is such a sweet fellow. No. Life is too short to fuss over standing ovations, because we talked about that as well.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah, everyone up, I'll stand. What the hell? Not me. I think it's a political thing. The angle of my knees will not make or break a show. If you refuse to stand for a less than superior performance, you get to die with your integrity intact. Goodie for you. Put it on your tombstone. Somebody worked their ass off for this production. Sure, I'll stand for the second assistant seamstress. And by the way, I really enjoyed your discussion. Thank you. It's nice to know you're there. I'm forced to pick and choose my panhandlers and was called out once because we got stopped during that chat by, there was a homeless guy approaching cars asking for money.
Yeah.
And we chose not to do anything at that time. Oh, the lights got very dark, hasn't it?
Oh, do you want to twiddle it?
Let me twiddle it, see if I can fix it.
Oh, hello.
There you go, you're back again. I was once called out for handing a full pack of cigarettes, what about his health, to a homeless old man. Well, take a number and get in line to kiss my ass. Willie ain't caring. Willie don't give no shit, does she?
I love that attitude.
Yeah.
That's the way forward. And that's right, if you're helping someone, do you know what I mean? Help the homeless, where's that from? Avenue Q?
Yeah. Give me $1. On the second show, we asked if there are such things as bad shows, because there were mixed opinions, and there still are mixed opinions on that within the comment section.
What if there's such a thing as a bad show?
Yeah, Lynn S says, firstly, there are definitely bad shows. Some are just absolute crap, but really, it's just your own opinion, isn't it? And different people like different things. That's very, very true. Would that person say that there are no bad movies or bad books, etc.? Just because you show up doesn't mean that what you produce will be a good product.
That makes logical sense. Just because someone has made it
Yeah.
doesn't make it good.
Absolutely. Leaving the interval, I agree, time is precious and I should decide how I want to spend it. If a show has a half time and the show has been iffy.
Half time?
Yeah.
Sounds like a football match.
Half time, mate. Everyone off, have a suck on an orange. And then the show has been iffy, I will think, do I want to give it some more time to show me that it's a good show, or would I rather start my way home and get home at a decent time?
Well, I guess if you
Big
do
consideration if you've got a big commute, right? Got a big travel to do.
And if you're falling asleep, for example, imagine you falling asleep in the comfort of your own bed.
Exactly. I've left at least 2 shows at the interval, Caroline or Change. I so wanted to love this, and so did we. We really wanted to love it. We were gunning for Caroline or Change, but it just didn't speak to us, and we got a lot of flack for that.
It did get better in the second act. It wasn't great.
Yeah, it still wasn't
The second act was better than the first.
So sorry, I don't know if that's what Lynn wants to hear, though.
Sorry, Lynn.
Should have stayed, maybe. And Man and Superman at the National with Ray Fiennes in 2015. You were in a room with Ray Fiennes and wanted to leave it and left at the interval. Wow, that must have been bad.
I missed that one.
This is where they should do that thing, like if you know you're onto a bit of a dud, you could just take the interval out, couldn't you? Trap them in their seats, guys.
That's what we think people do quite often. Is it Eva Van Hove?
Yes.
We think does one act pieces so people can't leave.
And people couldn't leave during when we sufficiently tortured each other at the National, which got very Marmite reviews. We enjoyed it.
But I think it's better to be 90 minutes long and straight through than to make 2 acts of some some short show.
I would say,
you know what I mean?
depending on the piece and the demand on the cast, you don't always need an interval for anything less than a 2-hour show.
Push on through.
Push on, give it us. We can sit through a 2-hour movie without actually dying to get out of our seats. So we could sit through a if it's demanding on the actors, I couldn't understand. But then follies just go to show, who cares about the actors? Make it 2.5 hours. Don't give them a break.
I mean, that was long.
That was long.
And also, that's where front of house makes their money ultimately. So they are going to take a financial hit if they take up the opportunity to buy drinks, buy ice cream, buy candy.
No. This is where I say put my ticket price up by 50 pence. Put everyone's ticket price up by 50 pence. I'm not going to notice it, guys. And also, I'm not going to have to deal with the scum that are rustling and making noises and spitting ice into their cups. It's infuriating me now to the point where I'm thinking, if there are serial offenders here or theatres that aren't addressing it, I'm going to encourage people not to go.
They should have a central log of details
I hate it. It's become
of people.
the bane of my life.
And you should get like strikes, and if you get so many strikes, then you're no longer admitted into the theatre.
Yeah, I mean, places like the Almeida, yes, it's a small auditorium, but those ushers are on it, man. Like, anything happens, they fly out of their usher seats, and they deal with it there and then, and they're so strict on stuff.
House,
I know we'll put more ushers on. This is where funding comes into talk.
Anyway.
We
digress.
Interesting enough, I was told that for both shows I should have stayed for the second act, and
there
it was
you go.
much better than the first. Of course, there are others that you stay for and wish you'd have walked out. Bally Turk at the National in 2014 comes to mind. Utter dreck. Love your vlog. Have a great day. Love you too, Lynn. And we will have one more for now, very quickly. John Cullen. Bad shows definitely exist, and I've seen my fair share of those. I have more shows than I care to mention based on my belief. If I have paid good money and have given my attention and goodwill and don't wish to waste any more of my time on the off chance it will get better, then leave. I used to hold out to the end.
I think that's hard. If you have invested
Life's
a lot of money
man.
in that ticket, I can understand if the ticket was 10 quid or the price of a cinema ticket, but often it's not. It's the price of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cinema tickets. So you're going to be more reluctant to let it go.
Maybe.
Just saying.
It depends how much you value your time. I always say, put a hourly value on your time. Even if that's minimum wage, what is an hour of your time worth in money? And what are you going to lose by associating that cost with how long the next act is? If your time, your personal value, outweighs it, go, leave.
See, I say, but experience is priceless, and experiencing, even if it's bad, your experience. I loved to a degree, I love analysing shows to work out why is it bad, what would I be doing, what element here isn't
I suppose you
working.
can. That's that argument. Can you learn a lot more from a bad experience than a good experience?
And it's painful, but
Yeah.
man, you can learn a whole lot from. Anyway.
I'm on the fence about it. Often bad shows are relatively obscure plays which sell tickets on the back of a famous actor, used as a revival of a dusty text. But when you see it, you question who believed that it was what was missing from the theatre landscape and would add positively to what is already available. Shows like True West, Strictly Ballroom and Ruthless the musical were not good in my opinion. We loved Ruthless.
Ruthless was a real surprise.
Yeah, I didn't see True West or Strictly Ballroom, but
No.
Ruthless, I think it also depends on the expectations you have going in. We expected nothing from Ruthless and hadn't heard a huge amount of hype around it, and when we went, we were bowled over.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Lower your expectations.
That's the way forward.
Yeah.
Lower your expectations, expect the worst,
Yeah.
and then whatever you get should be better.
Better than what is the worst, being killed in your seat?
I mean, that's the extreme,
I mean,
Mega
well, it
Simon.
depends how bad you want to go.
I can't say that I've ever been like killed in my seat whilst sticking to a
I've been
show.
emotionally damaged. Quite a lot,
Emotionally
quite often.
scarred.
Yeah. As for star ratings,
Never
I guess they
recover.
only give a snapshot, but only if you trust and are relatively familiar with the tastes of those issuing the reviews. Clearly
Yeah.
you don't trust us because we said we like Ruthless. I think we've lost a
Whoops.
subscriber, sorry. It says here as well, often star ratings differ based on the author, and I tend to stick to the same reviewers for their take as opposed to just seeing whatever star rating and following that. So.
And I guess it'd be interesting to know.
Trust, it's all about trust, isn't it?
I'm going to put it out there. Who do you trust?
Yeah,
Whose star ratings do you usually follow, or whose opinions?
You don't have to say us, guys, just because we've asked it. You
Yeah.
don't have to. Let me just see if I can fix this lighting
Oh,
a little bit.
we've gone all bright again.
Yeah, so here, look, it's like I'm wearing some sort of one of those, you know, those false masks where you click the thing and your mouth moves, like, bah, bah. I feel like I'm wearing one of those, but we'll move out the sun in a sec. So yeah, who do you trust? Who are your go-to
I'd be interested to know,
critics?
yeah.
There is one more comment, but I think I'm going to come to it a little bit later.
Oh,
actually. I'm
the suspense.
I'm going to put that on hold for now. Let's move on to a couple of hot topics. And one of the things that we're really passionate about and should probably clarify our position on a little bit, I think, is diversity casting.
Representation. I think it's interesting. Diversity casting is almost coming at it from the wrong point of view, because what I'd never want it to be is something just for the sake of doing it, and I think that's a real clear distinction to make. It should never just be oh we should do this because it's lacking. I think it's about a modern day representation on stage of what we see in life, and kind of pulling away from some of those old chains that used to bind us and saying, okay, because it's written like this is how it must be and this is how it all should be, when it's a piece of theatre, people. I think Willie Trout made a really good example in relation to Les Miserables and diversity casting, that, do you know what, they're just acting. They're not really at the barricade.
I've heard this said
They're
a lot
not
of
really
time.
those characters.
It's
We're pretending.
How far are you willing to go when it comes to suspending your disbelief? If that time and period in history wasn't in support of a particular ethnicity of actor, then what does it matter? The actor is portraying a part. Like I say, everything about what they do is a lie. Everything about what they do is a sham, and you are expected to believe that, but you draw the line at race. That makes no sort of sense, surely.
And it's an interesting thing what you're saying about, I guess, historical pieces, because we've seen that turned on its head quite a few times.
Well,
I guess
Hamilton have done it.
big,
the main
well-known ones would be
Sylvia
Hamilton.
had a black Winston Churchill and a very ethnically diverse cast.
Emilia.
And do you know what? Did it undervalue what the message or what? No. I think both of those pieces actually probably had something politically to say as well, and it was a conscious decision on behalf of the director and the creative team to take a specific political position. But even then, even without that, you take that away, what the hell does it really matter? If that actor has been cast because they're the best person for the job, what does it matter what ethnicity they are, what race, what colour, what creed, what background? It doesn't.
And it goes beyond as well just race. It goes into sex as well. because we saw the Madness of King George at the Nottingham Playhouse, and there are a number of the Doctor's male characters played by females, again turning on its head to address the balance, the male-female balance, which I think is really key as well.
I have heard the argument, though, that the fault of this maybe lies at the writer's door. There are not enough strong, well-written female characters in relation to male characters, and that just better parts need to be written for women. I've heard it said also that it's a case that it can be seen as maybe insulting to say you're such good an actor, you can now play a man. Like, that doesn't, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not addressing the problem, it's not getting to the root of the problem, and the root of the problem that those parts aren't there, not you could play a man's role. I don't know, I've heard both arguments, but I'm interested to know what you guys think.
I think it's a mix of both. It's not ideal, but if you're representing a time in history when there wouldn't have been any women around,
or in those positions,
in those positions around King George III, there wouldn't be female doctors. Full stop. They wouldn't have been allowed to elevate themselves to that point in society and have that education and given that level of academia. So I guess if it's a historical representation, even if you write it, it's not going to happen. For me, it comes down to that creative vision,
but I think we can
of
still
the
agree
director and the casting, and just that creative vision to go, do you know what, we don't have to be restricted by our lack of imagination.
I just hope that we're leaving a better legacy from writing from the 20th, 21st century than we have done 16th, 17th, 18th century, like with regards to addressing those poorly written female parts or the lack of female parts. I think that hopefully we're moving in the right direction, and I know there are writers working hard to readdress the balance out there. I mean, again, you talked about Amelia, but there's a lot
the
of
Almeida
things
Theatre.
Please, if you've not seen Amelia, go.
You've not got long left, you've only got a few weeks, I think. But the Almeida Theatre did a season recently championing female works, female leads, female directors, and again, that's an artistic approach to go, let's actively challenge this.
There are some venues and production teams and artistic directors that just get it right. Kwame at the Young Vic, for example,
got
is
it right
getting
for a long
it
time.
right. Well, he's new there, but yeah.
But I think the Young Vic have had it right for a long time.
But I think with him there now,
carrying
it's something
the mantle
that he will continue to champion, which is great.
Yeah.
The RSC, I mean, one of the oldest sort of. When I think of the RSC, I think of like an ancient society that have been around for a long time, and they've gone, we need to do things differently. They're addressing a historical problem, and they're doing it so bloody well, and we applaud them. Like you say, the Almeida, they get it, and the National, they get it too.
I want to also say the Globe. The Globe at the moment have got, I think, is it Henry V? Not only played by a person of like completely different race than it would be thinking of Henry V, but it's also played by a female, a woman, a fantastic actress.
And if you're not going to go because you're not going to enjoy that, then it's an insult to the ability of the actor. They might surprise you. Just give it a go. Who knows? Another thing that's a hot topic that I want to talk about.
Oh, we're moving on.
Moving on, Leggers. We've got a lot to say about diversity, and we always call it out if we see poorly diverse productions. We always call it out. We will say there's a real lack of diversity in this, which is an absolute shame. Yeah, we try to. We try to where possible. I just think there's no excuse for it.
Come on, get some decent representation.
Yeah,
you've heard this before, Leggers.
Absolutely.
If you're listening to this, you've heard this before.
Also, something else I want to talk about is something that you brought to my attention. Is theatre ticketing pricing elitist?
I would say, yeah. I would say, there's so much to say on this. I think ticket prices are way too high. It's difficult because I get for production companies, some shows cost a lot of money. You've got, and I often forget this, that when we look at a cast on stage, all we see is the cast. Sometimes it's only a cast of one or two, and we forget how many people are out of sight in the wings. ASM, DSM, sound, lighting, front of house managers running the theatre, backstage, costume, the people putting on the production. So productions cost money to put on, I guess is what I'm saying.
And the point is,
I get that.
Also, it's a business, and business runs on a profit model. You've got to be making money, as no one's going to want to do it. We live in a capitalist society. It's just something that we expect, and I think the moment you start sacrificing profit is the moment that a lot of people that make these shows happen will probably stop. And then what situation are we in? I think elitism within theatres is nothing new. For example, I'm thinking about the groundlings, those expected to stand in Shakespeare's times, to pay a small amount of money but not get a seat, and then nobility expected to sit in a completely different area of the auditorium, away from the riff-raff. There's always been a separation within theatre, it's nothing new.
I guess it's just reversed right then, because in the days of Shakespeare's Globe, we'd be down on the floor standing. Now we're just up on the gods.
Yeah, we're up in
out
the
of
gods.
sight, out of mind.
And in some theatres, in a different entrance as well. You can't even go in the same entrance.
The peasants' entrance.
The Pinter Theatre has a peasant's entrance, basically. So you can't, if you're in the balcony, don't be going in the main doors, love.
You're not good enough to come in the main foyer, the main bar.
You're around
upstairs,
the side.
up a shoddy, echoey, non-painted kind of plaster falling off the walls in areas.
Ain't where they're spending their money up there, is it? But that's a sacrifice. I mean, the irony is the people that are most passionate about theatre are maybe the ones that end up there. You know, in the restricted view seats, us included, because we often go there. There is no way that we would be able to see as much theatre as we did if we were having to pay stalls premium seat pricing. Just a little anecdote. I mean, we are lucky we get invited to a lot of things now, which is really lovely and very privileged, and we'll always be grateful for that. But I would say that only takes up maybe 40 to 50% of what we see, it's not everything. It's certainly not everything. Now, Fleabag is an interesting one. Fleabag recently went on sale in the West End.
Fleabag? What is Fleabag, for those who may not know?
Based on a situation comedy, dramedy, I don't know what you'd call it. I've only ever watched one episode myself, but it started off as a one-woman play by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I want to say.
You said something about it being up in the Fringe?
It was at the Soho Theatre in London, and then it went to the Edinburgh Fringe, or vice versa, and then they made a 2-series TV show of it.
Which is very popular.
Based on her, but based on this 90-minute monologue by Phoebe herself. She's also responsible for adapting Killing Eve and writing that. Supremely talented person, but she's bringing Fleabag to the West End for the first time. It's been in these tiny little venues.
As a one-woman show?
It's a one-woman show. It's just her, as far as I understand, it's sat on a stool, talking about her life, which is what Fleabag is. It's just based on her experiences.
Okay.
And the premium seats there are upwards of £150. And this week I saw a ticket exchange hands, it shouldn't do because they shouldn't be resold, but I saw a ticket exchange hands for £400 for a 90-minute one-woman show.
For one ticket?
One ticket.
I mean, that's amazing.
It's absolutely insane. I suppose ultimately, you pay your money, you take your choice. You see a production, you don't see a production. Also saw online within the community recently as well, arguments and conversations about upgrades. If you've paid £70 for a seat and then you find that someone that's paid £15 in an upper balcony, the balcony's closed and they get moved and they sit next to you for £15, should you be annoyed by that as someone that's paid £70 for your seat?
I think you should be annoyed by that. But sucks to be you. There's not a lot you can do about it. But you pay the value you want to pay. I guess it's up to the venue.
You pay the price that you are happy with at the time that
you're not going to feel happy, are you?
No.
Really.
But yeah, I mean, generally theatre as a whole has become quite expensive, or can be quite expensive.
It is quite expensive.
I've got a few tips.
Just before we go into the tips, I think what I do love and what you should really keep your eyes open for as leggers is live broadcasts.
Oh, it's on top.
We're going under a tunnel.
Sitting in the dark, watching a live broadcast in the cinema.
Yeah, sitting in the dark, live broadcasts make it very accessible. Tickets again aren't cheap, but they're more around the £20 mark.
Yeah, it's usually less than £20.
So £15 to £20 mark.
Broadcast
but you're getting to see a big show. You don't have to worry about travel. Mm-hmm. It's nice up close and tight, so you're not having to be up in the gods. Mm-hmm. So you get to see the show. I would recommend you checking out with your local cinema or the websites that promote them.
RSC do it, the Old Vic do it with NT Live. So more and more places are doing these live broadcasts.
Opera and ballet have been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
So that's so.
Check it
What
out.
advice do you have?
But if you are going to go to an actual physical theatre, and I'm only really going to be able to give you tips here for West End, for London shows, because regional theatres are fairly different. They operate quite differently, but they do some sort of entry scheme. So if it's a regional theatre and you're aged between 16 and 25, they often do cheaper tickets, or you can join a programme for a fairly small subscription, and then you'll get access to discounted seats and early bird entry, that sort of things, or tickets first. So regionally I would say do that. Within London, I can break it down into 3 sort of simple tips for you.
Number one,
buy early. If
when you mean
can,
early,
buy early.
How
Find
early?
out when a production that you are interested in is going on sale and at what time, and be on the website, the official website for that ticket, for that venue or that production house, or whoever it is that's putting that piece on, where you can buy tickets officially directly from them. Be on there before those tickets go on sale. I would say in most cases at least half an hour, maybe an hour before they go on sale. Now the most popular venues such as the Old Vic and the National Theatre and even the Almeida operate a queuing system, and they'll put you into a virtual waiting room.
Okay.
So when the tickets go on sale, you get assigned a place in the queue. The Donmar do this as well. You get assigned a random place in the queue, but I mean I tend to find earlier is the better anyway.
How do you find out when something is going to say? I mean, I'm being
Do
stupid.
your
Is it just
research.
a case of tapping into Google?
Yes, or you
Or
can be
anywhere.
members of the community, guys. Go on to Theatre Board. They are great, and tell you their community there are really good at knowing when things are going on sale and how you can get those tickets. Go on Theatre Board, Google it, go on Twitter, do your research if you're keen to get those seats. Now, if you go early, you generally have the benefit of pick of the crop. You can take your pick where you sit, and the cheapest tickets will always sell out first. Your £25, your £15 tickets will always sell way before your £95 seats. Yes, you pay a cheaper ticket price, you may be expensive for you, but at least you're in the room where it happens. So my first tip is, if you can, buy early. Be there, be ready.
Tip number 2.
Tip number 2 is the complete opposite of buy early.
Whoa! This doesn't make sense. Buy early, but buy late.
It will make sense.
Okay.
Buy late, and by late I mean as late as you possibly can. If you can be in London and be fairly flexible about what you are going to see, there's a couple of things that will pay dividends. First is day seating. Now, if you don't know about day seating, I think the best guide for day seating is the Theatre Monkey website. Go on there and click day seats, and they will give you information about which theatres offer day seats, how you can access them, from what time, and how much it's going to cost you. Day seats are seats that are reserved by the venue for sale only on the day of a performance, and you have to go directly to that venue and queue up outside ahead of box office opening to access them. Now, the most popular shows, such as Wicked, their box office, I believe, opens at 10:30. You would want to be in that queue no later than 7:30 a.m, 8 a.m. So be prepared for a long wait to get those tickets. But
So is it the bigger the show, the
generally, yeah. As a result, you will be able to get great value tickets, often front row tickets, for a fraction of the cost of what you would sit one row back, maybe £20-25.
Fantastic. We did that when we were in Broadway about 5 years ago.
We day-seated everything.
Day-seated everything. Every morning at 8 o'clock, pretty much, we're outside the
We
theatre.
would be there, sat on the pavement. Do you know what's lovely about it? It's a great community because people buy each other coffee, you get chatting to people that have got shared interests. It's a great way to make friendships. Don't write it off. Also, buying late means some theatres do what's called dynamic pricing. And dynamic pricing is, if a seat is unsold, maybe a couple of hours before a performance is due to go up, they will drastically reduce the cost of that seat in order to make sure it sells. For example, we've had seats at West End shows that should have been £65, and we have paid £10 by buying 2 hours before curtain, because dynamic pricing kicks in. Theatres get a bit tetchy, thinking, oh, I'd rather have a full house with seats sold than empty seats, and they may drop that price drastically. You can talk about maybe maybe half price. Not everywhere does it, so don't rely on it.
This sounds a bit more risky, this option.
It is, but it pays. It can really, really pay off.
When it works, it works.
When it works, it really works. My advice is, if you're thinking about doing dynamic pricing, is maybe a week or two before, if the production's already up and running, watch it, like go and see what the price is in the morning, and then check a price for tickets again a couple of hours before and see if there's any change. It will give you an indication of whether it's likely to happen on the day that you're going. You can't rely on it, but when it works, it really bloody works.
Number 3.
Number 3 is, if you can't do either of those things, if you've missed the opportunity to buy really early, you've got the luxury of just hanging around London and sort of hedging your bets about buying late, is don't be afraid of restricted view tickets, but do your research.
Okay.
Check for returns regularly, so go onto websites where things might have sold out and just see if anything comes up, maybe a few times a week, just see how things are going. And if a seat is labelled as restricted view, go on to Seat Plan or again Theatre Monkey and just check what people are saying about that view.
Seat Plan is really good because most people have photos
from their seats.
From their seats, so you can actually get to see what the view is like. Where is it restricted? What part of the stage am I going to be missing?
Yeah, they
so
would
you get
be
a good idea.
My 3 tips for cheaper theatre tickets.
There you go, fellow leggers. Legger Simon has given you his 3 top tips. What are your top tips?
Yeah, how do you make sure you can see as much theatre as humanly possible, but for a price that means you don't have to remortgage the house or sell your children into slavery? That's where the little leggers are now.
That's
right?
why we don't have them all the time. They're up a chimney. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to our last comment. I think that's plenty on seats. And that was about, are theatre ticket prices elitist? Yes, they are, in my opinion.
I think they can be, but they've always been. It doesn't make it right. Okay, another comment. Let me find it.
Which will tie us into our last little bit about book recommendations.
Yeah. So mid-watch food for thought. This is from the lovely Sean Nolan, occasional legger, friend. Thanks, Sean. Mid-watch food for thought. It was David Mamet that once said there's no such thing as a bad show, because if it captured even one person's heart, then it is, in theory, a success, as the point at the end of the day is to entertain and make an audience member feel something. I'm majorly paraphrasing, but I think an example he cited is, if you dislike a show or work of art or whatever, a lot of people seem to love, even if you think it's rubbish. So you can, if everyone likes it, you could still think it was no good. Basically.
Okay, is that all of the comment, or is there a bit more?
It says, then it theoretically can't be rubbish, despite if it's poorly constructed or poorly performed or whatever, because it's clearly affected people, which art's meant to do. I do think some shows are categorically bad, but that argument is a nice way of saying the show is still a bit the S word, but at the end of the day, it's still doing its job for some. It's serving the needs of some.
That's a very diplomatic and almost philosophical way of looking at it, I would say. However, what point I do think he makes is about David Mamet, and I read David Mamet's True or False, which is a really good book. I would recommend to any, I guess if you're interested in theatre or pursuing it as, it's almost like a thesis from his point of view as a writer, working, he's done so many productions, and he's basically tips on becoming an actor, becoming a professional almost, and he makes some really interesting points in relation to, sometimes I'm being blinded by the sun right now, sometimes as an actor, this is just one of the interesting points I think he makes. Sometimes as an actor, you're always looking for feeling the moment, and you think that when you feel it, that's the time when you're giving the best production. Like, oh, that was really good tonight. I really felt it. And he's basically saying that no one gives a damn. It doesn't matter if you feel it. It's about what the audience feel. And when you're in this constant state of trying to pursue the feeling, which inevitably you never get, or you get it and then it's gone, it becomes a really exhaustive exercise that is counterproductive. So just say the words. As Ian McKellen once said, just pretend.
Just pretend.
And
no
that's
method
kind of
in it, right?
That's what he just gives some really interesting insights. So, book recommendations is where we're going with this, Leggers.
Yeah, and I think I would recommend completely something, because that sounds quite deep.
It's thin. It's a thin book.
It's not long, but it's
David
deep,
Mamet, True or
right?
False. It's a real easy read, actually, because it's more like a thesis. It's really easy to read.
Interesting. I would recommend Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Going to the Theatre But Were Too Afraid to Ask Dear by the wonderful West End producer, because it's light, it's easy to read, and it has extra tips in about what it is like to go to theatre, how to get good seats, theatre etiquette, what sorts of venues put on what sorts of shows. It is a light-hearted, fun, frivolous, absolute romp of a ride, and I just think if you haven't read it already, it's a great read and it's a perfect gift for any theatre goer. I just think you can't fail to have a great time with West End producer, so look him up. He's always got something to say about something.
Two books. Two recommendations. Let us know what,
what you're reading. What should we be reading?
To do with theatre, not anything.
Yeah.
This is a
I'm
theatre
not
blog.
interested in your Mills and Boon, guys, but
So what theatre books have you read? And I think what we'll try and do is we'll just try and share some of those recommendations.
Yeah,
on
we'll
these
put the
videos
links
as well.
for the two that we've recommended from Amazon down in the description, so if you want to check them out, you absolutely can. Hopefully you'll join us again on another journey soon. We've arrived at our destination. Couldn't have timed
Got
that
to say,
better,
perfect
right?
parallel parking. Did you see that?
Like, nailed it, you did, like a glove. But we're the Breaker Leggers.
And we'll catch you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.